January 30th, 1944, 11:40 p.m. near Cisterna, Italy. A freezing wind swept across the marshes, south of Rome, as hundreds of American soldiers moved silently through the darkness. Their boots sank into the muddy ground, and every piece of equipment was wrapped in cloth to prevent the slightest sound. Ahead lay the German-held town of Cisterna, one of the strongest defensive positions protecting the road to Rome. These weren't ordinary soldiers. They were the 1st and 3rd Ranger Battalions, America's elite force, trained for missions most units would never attempt. Their commander, Colonel William O. Darby, had given them one simple order: slip behind German lines under the cover of darkness, capture Cisterna before sunrise, and open the way for the Allied advance. The entire mission depended on surprise. If the Germans discovered them too early, the Rangers would be trapped deep behind enemy lines with little chance of escape. For weeks, the Allies had struggled to break out from the Anzio beachhead. German defenses refused to collapse, and every attack had been met with fierce resistance. Now, Allied commanders were gambling on the Rangers to do what tanks and artillery had failed to achieve. As the Rangers advanced in single file through narrow drainage ditches, the night felt unnaturally quiet. No barking dogs, no vehicle engines, not even distant gunfire. One Ranger paused and looked toward an abandoned farmhouse standing alone in the darkness. For a brief moment, he noticed a tiny orange glow, a cigarette. Someone was watching. Before he could warn the others, the glow disappeared. The Rangers continued moving, believing the German sentry had walked away. But hidden in the darkness, German observers had already picked up their field telephones. The Americans are coming. Machine gun crews quietly loaded their weapons. Mortar teams prepared their first rounds. The Rangers believed they were hunting the enemy. They had no idea. The enemy was already waiting for them. January 31st, 1944, 3:15. I'm near Cisterna, Italy. The Rangers kept moving through the darkness, their eyes fixed on the road ahead. Every step brought them closer to Cisterna and deeper into enemy territory. Then, without warning, a brilliant white flare shot into the night sky. For a split second, the entire battlefield lit up like daylight. The Rangers froze. Then came the sound every soldier feared. The rapid roar of German MG-42 machine guns ripped through the silence. Tracer rounds slashed across the frozen fields as bullets tore through the lead companies. Men dove into muddy ditches while mortar shells exploded around them, throwing dirt, water, and shattered reeds high into the air. The mission had been compromised. The Germans had known they were coming. Colonel William O. Darby immediately understood the danger. His Rangers hadn't stumbled onto a small outpost. They had walked straight into a carefully prepared defensive line. Retreating across the open fields would be suicide. So Darby made a bold decision. Keep moving forward! Small Ranger squads charged directly toward the German positions. Armed with M1 Garand rifles, Thompson submachine guns, and grenades, they stormed one trench after another. Several machine gun nests were silenced in brutal close-range fighting. But each captured position revealed another line of German defenses waiting behind it. The Rangers were badly outnumbered. Still, they refused to stop. German officers watched in disbelief as these American soldiers continued attacking despite overwhelming fire. They had expected panic. Instead, they witnessed fearless determination. As the first light of dawn began to appear over the frozen Italian countryside, the battle was far from over. For the Rangers, survival now depended on one thing: fighting harder than the enemy believed was possible. As dawn broke over the fields of Cisterna, the Rangers found themselves surrounded. German reinforcements poured into the battlefield from every direction. More infantry rushed into the trenches. Armored half-tracks rolled up the roads, and mortar fire became even more intense. The small American force was now facing hundreds of experienced German soldiers, yet the Rangers refused to give up. A young lieutenant climbed out of a shell crater and shouted, "Follow me!" Without hesitation, his men charged across open ground through a storm of bullets. Grenades exploded inside German trenches before Rangers jumped in, fighting with rifles, bayonets, and even their bare hands. Every position they captured was won through courage, not numbers. German officers couldn't believe what they were seeing. These Americans had every reason to retreat. Instead, they kept attacking. Nearby, a Ranger machine gun team continued, firing until the barrel of their weapon glowed red from the heat. A combat medic ignored the bullets, flying around him as he crawled from one wounded soldier to another, treating injuries and pulling men into cover. Acts of bravery were happening everywhere. But bravery couldn't change the reality of the battlefield. The Rangers were surrounded, running low on ammunition, and completely cut off from support. Colonel Darby realized the mission could no longer succeed. He ordered any surviving Rangers to break through the German lines if they could. Some small groups managed to escape, Many others fought until they had fired their last round. When German soldiers finally captured the remaining Rangers, they expected frightened prisoners. Instead, they found exhausted men standing proudly, their uniforms torn, their weapons empty, but their determination unbroken. That morning, the Germans learned something they would never forget. The U.S. Rangers didn't stop fighting because the odds were against them. They stopped only when they had nothing left to give. By the afternoon of January 31st, 1944, the battlefield around Cisterna had fallen silent. Smoke drifted over the frozen fields where the Rangers had fought for hours against impossible odds. Burned equipment, abandoned weapons, and shell craters marked the ground where one of the fiercest Ranger battles of World War II had taken place. The cost was devastating. Of the nearly 770 Rangers who had begun the mission, only a small number made it back to Allied lines. Hundreds had been killed, wounded, or captured. The 1st and 3rd Ranger battalions were so badly damaged that they were effectively destroyed as fighting units. For many armies, such a defeat would have become a forgotten chapter, but not for the Rangers. German officers who had expected an easy victory left the battlefield with a new respect for the American soldiers they had faced. Again and again, they had watched small groups of Rangers charge machine gun nests, rescue wounded comrades under heavy fire, and continue fighting even after they were surrounded. The mission had failed, but the Rangers had proven something far more important. They had shown that courage isn't measured by victory alone. It's measured by the willingness to fight when defeat seems certain. The lessons learned at Cisterna changed how the U.S. Army used its elite troops. Future Ranger operations relied on better intelligence, stronger support, and closer coordination with conventional forces. Those lessons saved lives in later battles. Today, the motto, "Rangers lead the way," represents more than military skill. It represents sacrifice, determination, and the refusal to quit no matter the odds. The night German soldiers learned why U.S. Rangers were feared wasn't because the Rangers won an impossible battle. It was because they showed a level of courage that even their enemies couldn't ignore. More than 80 years later, the fields around Cisterna are peaceful once again. But the story of Darby's Rangers still lives on, a reminder that true bravery isn't the absence of fear. It's moving forward despite it.